This podcast is brought to you by North Carolina's electric cooperatives.
This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome to Balanced Debate for the Old North State. Boy, have we got a timely and significant show for you this week. We begin by discussing a ruling that reinstates some judicial primary elections that were released last Wednesday. The Supreme Court ruled for Cooper and against the legislature on the State Board of Elections, and we'll talk about it. We'll ask our panel to tell us whether a deal struck in the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is legal, and we talk about turmoil on the UNC BOG. Plus, as always, we ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Speaking of the panel, let's welcome this week's analysts. They include Becki Gray from the John Locke Foundation, Henry Hinton, longtime friend, Hall of Fame broadcaster and host of Talk of the Town in Eastern Carolina, Cash Michaels, also a Hall of Fame journalist, Chris Fitzsimon, a political analyst and columnist. I guess the rest of us are in some hall, whether it's the back hall or the Hall of Fame or shame, I don't know. We'll begin our uninterrupted discussion following these messages from our underwriters.
From treating the newest member of your family to helping a loved one make end-of-life decisions, your family physician is with you every step, for every stage of life, for every member of your family. Despite a healthcare landscape fraught with potential landmines, family physicians across North Carolina are providing you a lifetime of committed, dependable medical care. Family Physicians, your trusted healthcare advisor for life.
Agriculture. It's North Carolina's #1 economic driver. It puts people to work. It powers our economy. And as agriculture grows, so does our quality of life. North Carolina Farm Bureau is proud to support agriculture and our farmers because agriculture connects us all.
We got a full show for you. Let's buckle up. Late Wednesday, U.S. District Judge Catherine Eagles released a ruling regarding the legislature's law eliminating judicial primaries. She reinstated judicial primaries for the statewide court positions, namely this year's Court of Appeals and Supreme Court seat. However, she declined to reinstate primaries for district and superior court races. Becki, Judge Eagles was sort of under the gun to issue a ruling since the candidate filing period actually begins February 12th. Did she get it right?
You know, Tom, I think she did. And the reason why I say that is the reason why the General Assembly, the whole basis of this court case was that the General Assembly said we don't need primaries because we're still determining what those districts are going to look like for these judicial races. Well, for district court and superior court, they run in districts, so there is some legitimacy to that argument. But for Court of Appeals and Supreme Court judges where they run statewide, it doesn't matter. There's no district that they run in. And so why not go ahead, put them on the ballot February 12th, let people decide. You know, all of this confusion, whether it's judicial races, congressional races, legislative races, the people that I feel like are really the losers in this are the voters, number one, because there's a tremendous amount of confusion, and also people who might be interested in filing for these races. It's a big commitment. People need time. They need some certainty to it, and all of this confusion about all of this,
Chris,
I think,
here's
doesn't
what I don't
serve us
understand.
well.
Okay, so the legislature decided that they were going to hold off on primaries until sometime in June.
Right.
Well, let's think about that. Judicial primaries across the state of North Carolina in June are going to cost what, $3 million to the taxpayers?
Right.
Why couldn't they just wait until the next time judicial elections came up?
Well, that's a good question. I think in getting to Becky's point, the real disservice here was done by the General Assembly in the way they handled this. Remember, this was all thrown together at the last minute. Then we had new districts, then we didn't. They were going to have all judges, then we weren't. If they really thought, and maybe there's an argument, to change the way we elect judges, to change districts, to have appointed judges, all these things, why not have a year-long or 2-year-long commission, get all the stakeholders together, give us plenty of notice, give the voters plenty of notice, have people from both sides speak, and have a thoughtful, deliberative process instead of throw this to the last day of the regular session, then have all these hastily called special sessions when nobody knows what's on the agenda.
And they hadn't even done it yet.
No, and they still haven't done it. This has been handled very poorly. There's probably merit in looking at this, but this is not the way to do it. That's what creates the confusion.
election.
Well, I think most people would agree that after, 30 years, it's time to redistrict these court districts and prosecutorial districts and so forth like that. Henry, the Republicans, particularly the Republicans in the legislature, cried foul, saying this was a highly partisan ruling. Primarily since Catherine Eagles is a Democrat that was appointed by Barack Obama. Have we gotten to a place in this state, in this country, where every ruling is going to be judged not on whether it's constitutional, not on whether it's good, but by the party of the judge who made it?
As long as we have a Democratic governor and a Republican legislature, yes. But you know, the thing I don't really understand about this, Tom, if you're a Republican legislature, why do you want to eliminate the primaries? I've never understood the thinking on it, because don't you want the voters to know who the conservative judges are? I've got a friend who's actually running for Court of Appeals, and I was actually in a conversation with him before the judge's ruling came down, and he said to me, you know, my main concern is there could be 15 people in this race. And let's face it, when people walk into the voting booth, the average voter, they don't even know they've got to vote for judge. And they don't know who the candidates are, and they don't know what any of their political philosophies or the background are. So, you know, I think it's crazy not to want the primaries, personally.
Well, and Henry, to your point, too, there is some value in that whoever is elected with a plurality of the voters. In some cases, we've had very important races, judges elected with 20% of the vote because there's so many candidates there.
But Cash, most of us can remember that Court of Appeals election several years ago when we had, 20 people on the ballot?
At least.
It was a circus. Essentially what we've got here is we've got one Supreme Court seat up, held currently by a Republican. We've got 3 Court of Appeals seats up, 2 of which are held by Republicans. Was all of this done so as to try to protect these incumbent Republicans, you think?
Well, you know, the whole issue about judicial redistricting, to begin with, to link it to what we're talking about with the primaries, is that Republicans looked at the map and said, too many Democrats are getting elected here. Too many Democrats are in district races and superior races, and not to mention what's going on with Supreme and Court of Appeals. So we've got to change the map anyway. And we're just so lucky that we haven't done this in 30 years, so we have a built-in argument to take another look at it and have this redone. A lot of people don't like what's coming out of these commissions and committees as it relates to redistricting.
Do we really want Republican judges or Democratic judges? Don't we just want judges who are independent and make decisions based on what the Constitution says?
That's what I want.
I think that we should have the best judges that we possibly can, but in order to get there, the system has to be clear, it has to be concise, there has to be some certainty to it. And again, you know, some of this delay has been, again, General Assembly looking at these judicial districts after 1960 was when those were drawn, and they've been tweaked, but the whole state as a whole is not being considered.
Arguing
it's
the fact
time
that we
to
ought
do
to do
this.
It. Nobody's arguing that.
Can I answer your question about don't we want impartial judges? We do, but it's 2018, and you got to remember this is a legislature that's had to deal with the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in federal court in Richmond, who has overturned a lot of what they've tried to accomplish. So,
well, is it possible they've overturned it because it was
the way the system works? We
unconstitutional?
elect a president. The president, he or she, appoints a court that aligns with them ideologically. That's the way it's happening since the country was founded. Oftentimes they disagree with the way the legislative body works. It's also and that's the way the system is supposed to work. It's also worth noting, remember the General Assembly tried to have a retention election for the Supreme Court instead of letting the Republican member of the Supreme Court, Bob Edmonds. And the court said that you can't do that. You have to have an election. So they've been trying to tinker with the courts ever since they realized that we're at a place where more Republicans are up for election, as you pointed out.
But my question to Mr. Hinton is, what's the legislature trying to accomplish? Because every case that you brought up, what they've been trying to accomplish is dominance, making sure they stayed in power.
Just as the Democrats did before they had the power of the legislature.
And many Republican judges struck down Democratic.
Let me ask a question.
Exactly.
How long do we have to go before the answer that they did it before us gets to be the point of what's the right thing to do?
And how far do we have to go before, you know, every single decision, now that the Republicans control the General Assembly for the first time in decades, you know, everything that they do, every reform that they try to do, the accusation is they're only trying to do it to control power. You know, this whole accusation of, you know, why don't we step back and look what's best for North Carolina? Democrats have some good ideas, Republicans have some good ideas. At the end of the day, what we want are good judges.
Maybe if you wouldn't, they they wouldn't launch these things in last-minute special sessions or try to change the Constitution on a whim and have a judicial election just because it's a Republican candidate. If they were doing this in a thoughtful way for the last 6 years, I would think it would be great for North Carolina.
Could say
don't wait
amen.
until the Democratic governor.
Everybody could say amen to what you just said, Becki. While we're on the subject of court decisions, last Friday, the North Carolina Supreme Court sided with Governor Cooper on revamping the State Board of Elections. By a 4-3 ruling along party lines, the Supremes said lawmakers had overstepped their authority and had interfered with the executive branch's authority to carry out elections, or to carry out, the administration of elections in our state. Cash Michaels, the court's already ruled it was all right to merge the State Board of Elections with the Ethics Commission. The big sticking point remaining was regarding the appointments to the Elections Board. And lawmakers wanted 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. Traditionally, however, the party that held the governor's office was able to have a plurality. Cooper said he felt like it was important to maintain that system. Tell us why.
Well, to begin with, when the legislature came up with this cockamamie idea of 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, they also added some crazy rules about now if you get a majority, if you get 1 Republican to agree with 2 Democrats.
A lot of that was struck out.
Yeah, right. Well,
okay.
but that's the way they designed it. All right, they never designed it to be anything that would work. And that's what Cooper said, and that's why he filed suit, and that's what the court said. This is ridiculous, and the governor does have standing because the legislature was saying the governor has nothing to do with this. This is us and us alone, and the court said no.
But Henry, so far as it goes, this has been going on for decades and decades and decades. Is there any evidence it didn't work well? I mean, were decisions being made out of the State Board of Elections that were highly partisan?
Yes.
Okay.
In some cases, there were.
Okay.
But you know, I think the other point here with regard to the way the court ruled, one of the dissenting justices, Paul Newby, made this point. He said that if you take a look at the North Carolina Constitution, the Constitution pretty much says that the legislature can change any law they want to, and as long as different from the federal Constitution in that the federal Constitution says that the Congress has to follow the Constitution. The North Carolina Constitution allows lawmakers to change anything they want to as long as it's not in conflict with the Constitution. And Justice Newby says here that in the case of the Ethics Board and the Elections Board that the legislature was within their purview.
But let's go back to the previous conversation we had, Becki, a few minutes ago. Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger said that this decision by the Supreme Court was breathtakingly partisan, meaning the 4-3 with 4 Democrats and 3.
Along party lines.
What's your response to this? I mean, hasn't this legislature been pretty partisan?
Everybody's been partisan. That's part of that's the whole problem
so
that
why
we've
is this
talked about. I mean,
accusation?
that's the whole problem. Yes, here's the thing that's interesting about that too is the Supreme Court decision, which was right along party lines, actually puts it back to a 3-judge panel that originally said the General Assembly was right in this. So as that goes back to that 3-judge panel, it's going to be interesting to see where they fall on this. But it's all partisan.
Well, here's the thing that nobody talks about enough. What they did was they said it's going to be 4-4 in the State Board of Elections, and the parties would. 1 year the Democrats would be in charge, 1 year the Republicans in charge. The law says the Republicans will always be in charge in even-numbered years.
Yeah.
So they passed a law saying they'll always be in charge when there's an election, a state which is insane. And if this was such a good idea, why didn't they do this when Governor McCrory was elected?
Okay, but answer this part for me. Governor Cooper is saying that the way the Republicans passed this with a 4-4 makeup, inhibited his being able to administer this from an executive. Tell me why I don't get that.
Well, he sees it like this is an executive branch agency. We've already had cases where they take.
So how does having a 4-4 representation on the board inhibit him from being able to administer this?
Well, if the Republicans are the chair in every even-numbered year, that means the other party is always in charge of the election. How in the world? I don't understand how that could be fair. And I don't think this is a good idea at all. If it was a good idea, then why wouldn't we stagger who's in charge during election years? Why was this done in a special session with no notice? Again, why didn't we have a hearing about this? Why has this not been done when we've had Governor Holshouser, Governor Martin, Governor McCrory? Nobody's ever said this was a good idea to change it.
Duly noted, yeah.
The irony of this should not be lost in that you have people complaining about it being a partisan decision about the fact that the governor wants a partisan board.
As all governors have always had.
As
all governors have always had.
But I mean, well, in this particular case, you've got the legislature saying, let's go 4-4.
And let the Republicans run it in election years.
Well, of course, you know that's a good point. I will accept your point on that.
You don't have a choice.
But I mean, so the other argument is that the governor should always have more of his party on the board than before, which is what than the dissenting party. But the reality of it is that the legislature was trying to get some sort of nonpartisan into it.
No, then why did they chair it in the election years then? Why would they not stagger it and have it be Democrats?
Well, I mean,
that would have been nonpartisan.
Again, you know, Cooper can sue again and try to get that changed.
I watched the debate while this was being on the floor, and Nelson Dollar from Ontario kept saying, "This is fair." And I'm saying, no, it isn't. You've rigged the game here. Give me a break. It's rigged.
Well, and the Republicans' position.
You want it to be nonpartisan again.
No, I want it to be fair.
But the amazing thing to me about that is all these things that happened during the years that Democrats were in charge of the legislature. Look, we didn't hear that complaint coming from that side.
When people come to me and say this is fair and they're as partisan as the day is long, I know something is up.
My dog is the only nonpartisan individual that I know, and I'm not so sure about him.
He should chair the Board of Elections.
To go back to the system that Roy Cooper has advocated for is not fair either. So that's kind of the question.
When he was appointing everybody? Why was it fair under Governor Martin? Why was it fair under Governor Holshouser?
Well, it was fair under Governor Easley and Governor Perdue also.
That's right. That's the point. That's the point. That's exactly the point.
Okay. My point about this, if having equal numbers of representations is fair for the State Board of Elections, why don't we do the same thing for the UNC Board of Governors? And we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes. A memorandum that was passed last Friday indicates that a deal has been reached by Governor Cooper and the 4 utility companies wanting to build the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Under the terms released, with the operators would pay $57.8 million for certain projects. And in return, the pipeline would be approved. Chris, we got an inkling this might be coming down when the Department of Environmental Quality issued a key water permit for the pipeline last Friday. A lot of people are applauding Governor Cooper for making a good deal for the state. Opponents are claiming this agreement is illegal, maybe unconstitutional. The interesting part about all of that is that the people who are opposed to it are not only Republican legislators, but also environmentalists who are on the same side for a change.
Well,
what do you think about it?
I think this is going to be in the courts. There's no question about it. I still have some questions about the $57.8 million, 58.7, whatever it is, and how that money's coming to the state, who's getting it, how it's going to benefit the communities, what individual, is this money going to help businesses hook up instead of helping the people in those areas? I think it's a long way off before this is decided, but I do think it's worth noting that a lot of people on this program and other places have bashed Governor Cooper because he didn't endorse it earlier, when I think whatever side you're on, I think we ought to applaud a governor that takes his time, that looks at a thing cautiously, that has his people look at the permitting process. I'm not a supporter of the pipeline, but at least we had a governor that took his time to make this decision.
Henry, there are a lot of people that are questioning this because they said, look, with that water permit that the Department of Environmental Quality issued, basically, the 4 utility companies had satisfied all the basic requirements so far as building this. We didn't need to be making a $57 million deal to get the whole pipeline approved.
Well,
so what's
again,
that about?
part of the rationale that the governor's office has now said the reason for the $58 million is so they can start to mitigate what damage might be done by the pipeline. That's the reason for the permit. The permits are issued because they've already done the research on whether it's going to be mitigated. But my favorite part of this is when the governor's office came back and said that it was 2 separate deals, that the $58 million payoff was different than the issuing of the permits by the Department of Environmental Quality. And of course, that was one of the most absurd things that I've ever heard in politics. Of course it wasn't separate.
Becki, I want to know who's paying the $57.8 million. Is it the ratepayers of these 4 utility companies?
Where's it
or the shareholders
from?
Or who?
The operators of the pipeline are the ones that are paying into this.
Yeah, but they're all utility companies.
But where do they get
and
their
where
money?
Get their money?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a question. I mean, does it come from ratepayers? Does it come from shareholders? Does it come from from taxpayers? Where does it come from? But the question with this, and Henry, to your point, you know, there is, I think there is a legitimate point to have some sort of mitigation funds set aside. And in other states that have made these kind of deals, that has been part of it. But what's different about this is the $58 million can be used for mitigation, it can be used for economic development, it can be used for renewable energy, and there's no allocation of that money. And so, and the governor has sole control over it.
Exactly.
The money
That's
ought to go
right
into the
there.
Treasury. It ought to be dispersed through the
reminiscent
General
of a deal
Assembly.
that Mike Easley made, if you remember, when two deals when he was Attorney General. One was with Smithfield Foods regarding hog waste and poultry waste.
But
the other one was
the judiciary had some control over where that money went.
Well, not much, because most of it ended up going to NC State University, and then $2,000 a year discretionary money for the Attorney General's office. Right. The big deal, though, was the tobacco settlement deal, in which the Golden Leaf Foundation and other organizations got millions and millions of dollars. Here's where we are with this, Cash. The legislature says they want to take a look at this deal. What happens if they come back and say, we don't like this deal?
Well, first of all, you can count on them doing that, because for the governor to have sole control of what some people are calling a slush fund is something that this legislature will not stand for.
All right.
And under our Constitution, don't forget, money that comes to the state has to go through the Treasury. The General Assembly in North Carolina appropriates that money.
All right, I want to move over very quickly because we got Henry Hinton here, and Henry used to be on the UNC Board of Governors. There was an interesting op-ed piece that took place. Ted Bissett, the chairman of the UNC Board of Governors. Lou Bissett, I'm sorry.
Right. Ted's his brother.
Yeah, no, he's not. They're not related, as a matter of fact. Wrote an op-ed piece saying that he thought the board was too political, needed to stay out of politics and the day-to-day management of the 16-campus system. You served on that board for a while. Tell me your opinion of what of that op-ed piece.
I thought Lou's op-ed piece was right on target. Lou Bissett is a true patriot. He loves the university system, and he's a great leader. I'm going to tell you, he's been the guy that's tried to bring that board together when I was on it, and now that I'm off of it. It's a difficult task. He's got some real doozies on there now.
But Cash, the members of the, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say this: the big hubbub that came as a result of that came from one board member, Bob Rucho, former Senator Bob Rucho, who attacked Lou Bissett, saying that he was attacking the board. Lou is not doing anything but pointing out what everybody knows and wants, which is that the board should stay non-political and they should stay out of the day-to-day operations of the university system.
But they haven't done that since this new board took hold, have they, Cash?
Oh, no. You have new members. You have folks like Tom Fetzer, the former mayor of Raleigh and former head of the Republican Party, who believes that he's there and others who just joined are there to change the whole culture of the UNC campus system, and they intend to do so.
I want to know where Margaret Spellings, the UNC president, is in all of this, because, I mean, she's having to sit here and watch this byplay taking place.
I thought one of the most interesting quotes in the story, I think it was in the News and Observer, NC Spin board member and member of the Board of Governors, Leo Daughtry, questioned whether Fetzer and Rucho have it out for Spellings and trying to get rid of her. He literally said, he's raised the question, are they out to get President Spellings? I think it's a legitimate question.
I think Margaret Spellings has done an incredible job. I'm a big admirer of hers, and I think that she has really kept things very calm and taken the right position on it. She has. But, you know, I think, you know, you have to go back to, you have to think about one of the things that Lou Bissett called for was unity. There's also a value to free speech and to asking questions and to shake things up every once in a while.
I just want to say, with regard to Margaret Spellings, she is a fantastic leader. She's exactly who the university system needs. She gets way too much input and way too much criticism.
We've had so much fun on all these discussions. We've abbreviated the time for Tell Us Something We Don't Know. But can you tee off and give me a quick one? Tell us something we don't know, Chris.
The Innovation School District can't find somebody to run it, which shows how flawed the whole thing is.
All right. Cash Michaels.
February 23rd in Rocky Mount, there will be a commemoration of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, which was first delivered in Rocky Mount in November of 1960.
You know, you documented that in an article that you wrote, and I don't think very few people had recognized that it wasn't exactly the same I Have a Dream speech, but it was pretty doggone close.
It's the first place he ever uttered those words.
Yeah. Henry Hinton, tell us something we don't
want
know.
to talk about the merger between UNC Healthcare and Carolinas Regional down in Charlotte. That thing is in trouble at this point. State Treasurer has a lot of questions. Board of Governors wants to know why they weren't in the loop from the beginning. Blue Cross is now sending out notices to their big customers saying this is going to run healthcare cost up. There's no structure in place for even how the deal is going to move forward. I'm going to say it's going to be tough to get it to the finish line.
Well, and I'm going to say that this is my tell us something we don't know. Next week, we're going to tackle that UNC-CHS merger. And I have former Governor Bev Perdue and Leo Daughtry, who's a longtime member of the legislature and is on the Board of Governors.
And Leo's had some very good questions about it.
And they're going to be on our show next week.
He'll be a great person to have to talk about it.
That should be very interesting.
Yeah.
Becki Gray, tell us something we don't know.
In this past year's budget, the General Assembly passed a new kind of charter school that partners with universities, and there were eight universities that were part of that program and these are universities that have teacher training programs, they have administrative programs, and they're partnering with schools in their areas for a new kind of charter school. Very exciting.
Interesting. Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, and read my weekly column, be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. And join us next week. As I say, we should have a very interesting show and more balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
From treating the newest member of your family to helping a loved one make end-of-life decisions, your family physician is with you every step, for every stage of life, for every member of your family. Despite a healthcare landscape fraught with potential landmines, family physicians across North Carolina are providing you a lifetime of committed, dependable medical care. Family Physicians, your trusted healthcare advisor for life.
Agriculture. It's North Carolina's #1 economic driver. It puts people to work. It powers our economy. And as agriculture grows, so does our quality of life. North Carolina Farm Bureau is proud to support agriculture and our farmers because agriculture connects us all.
North Carolina Channel is made possible by the financial contributions of viewers like you who support the UNC TV network.